Hi. Hi. In this video, we'll be talking about a very important topic, and that is cybersecurity. So here's the problem. All information on the internet is sent over shared wires, whether it's credit cards, passwords, emails, bank accounts, or pictures of cats. All of this information is sent using the same routers over the same wires, and it turns out if a cybercriminal is on the network, or maybe a cybercriminal has taken over one of the routers, all of this information can be read. All of these requests and responses can be read in plain text by a cybercriminal. So cybercrime and cyber warfare are serious threats that can have devastating effects. Cybercrime is crime carried out using technology and oftentimes using the internet that targets specific people. Things like identity theft, stealing money, stealing your private information, or taking control of private computers. Cyber warfare, on the other hand, is something done at a military level. A lot of countries these days are using cyber warfare as a military tactic. Things like hacking into government computer systems, taking control of things like communication, transportation, water, energy production. These are all serious offenses. So let's look at a few of the specific attacks that are sometimes carried out. One common type of cyber attack is something called a DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack. And the way this works is a hacker will take control over millions of personal computers and use them as an army to spam a web server with so many requests, so many HTTP requests so close together that the server can't handle it and it crashes. A lot of times when this happens, the web server will spit out some valuable information as it's crashing because things are going wrong. When this happens, the website is down and it can no longer provide service to anyone else. So that's why it's called a denial of service attack. It's distributed when it's done using many different computers, when it's done with an army of computers that have been taken over. Another common attack is DNS spoofing. Now how this works is a hacker's computer will actually sit between your computer and your computer's DNS name resolver. So the service that your computer uses to map domain names to actual IP addresses might be compromised. So if a hacker's computer is pretending to be a DNS name resolver, it will receive a request from your computer. Let's say your computer requests bank.com, and it will stop it before it gets to the real DNS name resolver, and it will feed your computer the wrong IP address. It won't feed it the real bank.com IP address. So now your computer receives this IP address thinking it's actually bank.com, and it goes to a completely different website. And a lot of times hackers will create this false website to look exactly like the original. So then you start typing your password in, you start doing actual things, and the hacker has all of that information. So that's known as DNS spoofing. So these are real problems: cybercrime, cyber warfare, DDoS attacks, DNS spoofing. So what's the solution here? How do we combat this? Well, the solution is cybersecurity. Now, what does cybersecurity consist of? Well, cybersecurity consists of protocols for encrypting and decrypting information so that everything we sent is secure, it's scrambled, it can't be read by a third party. It's made up of security software that can help your computer defend itself, and simply following best practices. So it turns out most cybersecurity breaches happen due to humans messing up, not computers messing up. So if humans are using computers incorrectly, a lot of times they're vulnerable to cyber attacks. So let's dive into each of these. The main cornerstone of cybersecurity is encryption. All computers use the same protocols for encrypting and decrypting information so that third parties can't read it. And this all goes back to our old friend cryptography. So we've actually developed open standards for encryption so that all devices on the internet are encrypting and decrypting using the same process so that we're all able to communicate securely. These protocols are SSL and TLS, and that stands for Secure Sockets Layer and Transport Layer Security. Now, all this means is that you're no longer sending simple HTTP requests with all of your information out there in the open. You're actually going to scramble that information using cryptography. And you can tell whether or not you're using secure communication by looking at the URL. If it starts with HTTPS, then you are using secure communication. Everything that you're sending and receiving is scrambled so that even if someone were to be in between and they could receive the information, they wouldn't be able to read it because it's all scrambled. So what type of encryption are these protocols using? Well, this goes back to public key encryption. SSL and TLS make sure that all computers communicating over this protocol are using public key encryption. Now, the way this works is that the public key encrypts information and the private key decrypts the information. So if Alice wants to send something to Bob, Bob will send Alice Bob's public key. Alice will encrypt the message with Bob's public key. And now the only way that message can be decrypted is using Bob's private key. And ideally, Bob is the only person in the world that has the private key. Or rather, Bob's computer is the only computer in the world that has the private key. So this is what internet encryption is built on, public key encryption. When you go to visit a website, first the website sends you their public key, you encrypt the information using the website's public key and send it back to the website, and the website decrypts it with the private key. And the reverse happens when the website sends something to you. The website encrypts with your public key, sends it to you, and you decrypt it with your private key. This is public key encryption. Now, one other important part of this encryption process on the internet is certificate authorities, or CAs. So CAs verify the public keys of the websites you visit. So let's say you're visiting Twitter. Twitter will send your computer a public key in order for your computer and twitter.com to communicate securely. Your computer then takes this public key and verifies it with a certificate authority. A CA will verify that the public key you received does in fact belong to Twitter and not some random hacker that sat in between you and Twitter and sent you a fake key. So certificate authorities are important for making sure that the public keys being used do in fact belong to the websites that they say they do. So cryptography is the cornerstone for communicating securely on the internet. All this information is getting sent over shared wires, so we need to be able to scramble that information on one end and descramble it on the other end, making sure no one in between can read it. And that is done with public and private key encryption. Another way to combat cyber attacks is using antivirus software. So a lot of times you might mistakenly download a file or visit a website that actually installs something malicious on your computer, things that can track your keyboard so it sees every key you type, or things that will use your computer in a distributed denial of service attack. So the way we combat this is using antivirus software that can actually run on your computer, detect and delete malicious programs, and make sure your computer is clean. So what specifically can you do? There's a lot that's been done that's embedded in the internet to make sure your computer is communicating securely, and a lot of programs out there that can clean your computer of malicious software. But what can you as an internet user do? Firstly, you should use strong passwords. If you use a very common password such as 1234 or the word password, chances are someone can guess your password and pretend to be you on the internet. It's also important to not repeat passwords between websites, because should one website be insecure, if that website's hacked, that hacker now has these passwords that can be tried on other websites. So if you have the same password for Google and Facebook and Twitter, and one of them fails, now they're all insecure. It's very important to install security updates when they're offered to you. So don't keep clicking remind me later, install them now, because that means the service you're using has found a security bug. It's found a flaw and they've fixed it. So security updates are very important. And in general, you should think twice before clicking on a link or installing a program. Make sure it's actually what you think it is. So think twice. Don't click on links in emails from people you don't know. Don't visit websites when your browser warns you not to. And don't download files when your browser warns you not to. A very common attack is simply humans messing up. It's called phishing. Let's say you get an email from an unknown address that claims to be twitter.com, and it asks you to sign in with your password. If that's not actually twitter.com, then that person now has your password. So really make sure that it looks legitimate, that you're communicating using HTTPS, and listen to the warnings that your browser and your computer is giving you.